Then you walk in and they go, nah, they already have a determined kind of attitude toward you based on the thoughts you were thinking before you even met them. Back 30 years ago when I started taking workshops, we would literally bring people into we called it a laboratory or a workshop, sanctuary, and the day before we were having a meeting, we'd bring them in through a people mover and we'd interview them. What is it you need to know about me in order to make a decision? What are your hot buttons? What are your fears? What makes you decide yes? And we would get all this information from them because literally it's all available, because all the thoughts they've ever thought are out there as waveforms, like an archive that you could go to on Google or something to pull forward the information. So it's critical that we learn the power of our mind and use it. And I know most of you know this, but it's important to really see how far this extends. So again, your reality is not the cause of your thoughts and your feelings, but your thoughts and feelings are in fact what is creating your reality. Now, every thought you send is a vibration. And I want to share a story with you. Mark and I decided one day that we were going to sell 1 million books in one day. No one had ever done that up until then. Since then, J.K. Rowling's done it with, I think, the 3rd Harry Potter book. Now, at that point, there was no model to go after, no one to say, how did you do it so we can model what you did. We simply had a vision and a goal. And we started holding this in our mind every day. We'd see a picture, New York Times headline, Canfield and Hansen sell 1 million books in one day. And we visualized it, we intended it, we put energy into it, we talked about it, we fantasized about it, we believed it was possible. About 35 days later, we're at this conference in New York. We're at this conference in New York where they have the American Booksellers Association convention. And I get on a bus after the convention to go back to the hotel. I sit down next to this woman, and she says, "You're Jack Canfield, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah," thinking she knows who I am. I'm pretty cool. And then she said, "It's your name tag." Kind of reduced my ego a little bit. And then she said, "What are you and Mark up to? You're the chicken soup guys, right?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "We just decided to sell 1 million books in one day." She said, "Really? I can help you do that." As fast as I said it, she said, "I can help you do that." And I said, "Really, how?" She said, "I'm the buyer for the W.H. Smith bookstores." Now, if you've ever been at an airport, most of them have a W.H. Smith bookstore. And she said, "What we could do is put all your co-authors, along with you and Mark, in the East Coast around 6 in the morning, and we'll put you in New York and Boston and Washington and Atlanta and Miami, and we'll have you sign books for 2 hours. And then we'll put you on a plane and we'll fly you over to Cleveland and Detroit and Chicago, and then we'll fly you again to maybe Salt Lake City and Dallas, and we'll take you all the way across the country. In the evening, you can be signing books in California and Portland, Oregon, and Washington, D.C. I said, "Why would you help us do that?" She called me dummy at that point. She said, "Dummy, if I sold 1 million books in one day, don't you think that would make me look like a champion to my boss?" I said, "Absolutely, I get it." Now, a lot of people would say, "Oh, you were just lucky. That was coincidental that you got this person to sit down next to you." I say, "No. We sent out an email saying, Jack and Mark want to sell 1 million books in one day. Anyone who wants to play, please reply." And the way she replied was by sitting next to me on the bus. When you start using the law of attraction, you don't always attract to you the item. You don't get the car showing up in your garage. But what you do get is the resources, the strategies, the magazine articles, the books that people put in your hand, the seminars they tell you to take, and people like this sitting down next to you saying, "Hey, I can partner with you and we can make this happen." And that's happened over and over and over and over in our life. A couple of months ago, I said, "I want to go to the Olympics in Beijing." I'd never been to the Olympics except in LA for one day. I said, "I want to go." 30 days later, I'm walking into a company that I do some speaking for called Isogenics to give them a big motivational talk. And as I'm walking in the back of the room, this Chinese guy walks up to me and he says, "Are you Jack Canfield?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Have you ever spoken in China?" I said, "Hong Kong, but not mainland China." He said, "How would you like to do that?" I said, "Great." I said, "Even more importantly, I'd like to get tickets to the Olympics." He says, "Oh, that's a done deal. I can get that for you." He walked up to me. So literally, you'll start having these people come into your life. There's actions you have to take, but it gets very, very exciting. So we want to use the internet. I just told you that, so we'll move on here. Now, you may remember in the movie The Secret, it talks about the 3 steps: ask, believe, and receive. I want to take this ask part a little deeper today. So the success principle 2 that I write about in my book is called Decide Exactly What You Want, which is the asking part, having preferences, having desires, setting goals, having a vision, having objectives, becoming a millionaire, whatever it is that you want. Now remember in The Secret, it says, talk about what you want, not what you don't want. I was interviewing a woman, a counseling client, and she said, I want you to teach me how to use the law of attraction to get the perfect guy in my life. I said, great. Describe your perfect guy. She said, oh no, I know exactly what I want. Just teach me how to use the law of attraction. I said, I will, but I want to make sure you've got this right. She said, okay. I want a guy that doesn't smoke, that doesn't screw around, that doesn't watch TV all weekend, that's not a sports maniac and never spends time in it. And she gave me 11 things she didn't want. It doesn't work. You have to focus on the positive, not the negative. Now here's a guy named Lou Holtz. Lou Holtz was the coach of the Notre Dame football team. Several national championships, many bowl game championships, and so forth. His recent book is called Wins, Losses, and Lessons. Now, I wrote a book, or edited a book, a year ago called You've Got to Read This Book. And I interviewed 55 people, along with Gay Hendricks, about the book that had changed their life. Was there one book that changed your life? And he said, yes, there was a book that changed my life. It was called The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. I see a few people are clapping. You've read the book. Exactly. Now, in that book, David Schwartz says you should make a list of all the things you want to achieve before you die. And he recommends a list of 100 things. I know Mark mentioned that this morning. So Lou Holtz had just lost his job. He was an assistant football coach, lost his job, and he was home, and his wife had to go back to work as a radiologist to make enough money to feed them. And one day she came home and she said, I was in the supermarket and they had this book for sale called The Magic of Thinking Big. Why don't you read it? So he read it. He wrote out 107 goals that he wanted to achieve. And when his wife came home at night, he was real excited, and he showed it to her. He said, honey, look, 107 things that I want to achieve in my life. Thank you for this book. It's got me real excited. Why don't you read my list? So she read the list. Then she said, at the end of the list, she said, Lou, you need to add one more goal to the list. He said, what's that? She said, find a job. Find a job, Lou. We need to have a job. Now he had 108 goals. Lou's now in his 70s, and when I was interviewing him, he said, I have achieved 102 of those 108 goals. And those goals included winning a national football championship, eating dinner at the White House with the sitting president, meeting the Pope, going to the Vatican, appearing on the Johnny Carson late night show. All major goals. Landing a plane on an aircraft carrier was another one he had. Now, what he said was the goals give you direction. They give you a sense of movement in your life. John Goddard is another person we wrote about in the first Chicken Soup for the Soul book. He set 127 goals when he was 15. He's now in his 70s. He's achieved 115 of his 127 goals. So I really want to have all of you do that as a way to get clear about what it is you want in your life. If you've not yet done that exercise, sometime before you get home, on the plane home or whatever, start to think about what would be 101 goals that I want to achieve. When I was interviewing General Wesley Clark, he said it doesn't take any more effort or any more time to dream a big dream than it does to dream a small dream. Barbara today was talking about dreams of changing the world, of bringing your influence and your essence, your contribution out into the world. Big dreams. Mark talks about ending hunger and biofuel, and today we're doing the Live Earth, and we're talking about creating a sustainable planet that's ecologically feasible, that has social justice for all, and that has economic sustainability for everybody. Those are huge goals. Let your goals be as big as you want, but don't make them bigger than you want because you don't have to. In other words, trust what you want to do. Walt Disney said, if you can dream it, you can do it. You're not allowed to have a dream that you don't have the capacity to create, either through your own efforts or the efforts of gathering a team together. How many of you have a GPS system in your car? How many of you know what a GPS system is? Yeah, it's simple. You get in my car, I have a Lexus, I get in there and I punch in an address. I can punch in an address in Colorado and it will provide a map for me all the way from where I live in Santa Barbara to Colorado. I don't have to know the way. And the same is true for you. Once you set a goal, the how will show up. Too many of us are concerned. We won't set the big goal because we don't see how we can do it. We don't want to look like an idiot. We don't want to commit to something and be foolish and be disappointed one more time. You do not have to know how. You only have to know what it is you want. And if you're clear about that, then the how will show up. I love this metaphor. I know Harv used it in his seminars, and I use it in mine too. It's that if you drive in the dark, and I put this into The Secret, you may remember, if you're driving in the dark, you only see the next 100 yards ahead of you. That's all you need to see. When Mark and I decided we wanted to write a book of stories, we didn't even know how to get an agent. We didn't know how to get a publisher. But later, we were about halfway through the book, we met an agent at a party. And we said, how do you get a book published? He said, I'll be your agent. Then we went to New York, and 24, 33 publishers, whatever it was, turned us down. And then we went, and the agent gave us the book back and said, I can't sell it. You have to sell it. So we went to the Booksellers Association convention because someone said if you go there, every publisher, there were 4,000 publishers there, they all have booths. Most of them have their acquisition editors. So we went and did that. Finally, Health Communications decided to publish it. Now we didn't know how do you market it. So we asked 11 people, including Barbara DeAngelis, John Gray, who'll be speaking here. We asked Stephen Covey. We asked Ken Blanchard, who wrote The 1 Minute Manager. We asked Harold Bloomfield, who wrote the TM book on Transcendental Meditation. All had best-selling books. And they said, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. We did 5 things a day that they told us for 14 months. We did not hit a bestseller list for 14 months. But once we hit that list, as Mark said this morning, we were #1 on that list, the New York Times list, for 3 years. And then when we brought out the second book, we didn't even think about that. Oh, second book. And then a third one and a fourth one. Now 125 books, something like that in print. And then some people came and said, hey, we'd like to license your brand. For what? Dog food. I said, are you kidding me? We're going to retire on dog food. Chicken soup for the pet lover's soul, cat food and dog food. So you never see the whole thing. But if you just start, I promise you the how will show up all along the way. People will give you books. They'll say to go to seminars. You'll meet the right people at the right time. The other thing I want to talk about for just a minute, because this is, I think, a little bit of a different twist on the law of attraction as I've been talking to people, is we always talk about attracting into our life what we want. Attracting in the $1 million or the perfect spouse or the perfect home. But I want you to think about this as well. Everything that you find yourself attracted to is part of the universal guidance system telling you this is the way you're supposed to be moving. This is where your destiny lies. Barbara talked today about the idea that she gave up the TV thing. And then people were offering her TV shows, and she said, no, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. I don't get excited. I don't get turned on. There's no juice for me. And so you look at, you're attracted to certain people. Trust that. You're attracted to certain teachers, to certain seminars, to own certain kinds of things. I remember I was going to a workshop with my wife. It was a conference of humanistic psychologists. And my wife is very, very much into, how to say this, she's much more into people and relationships and pets. I mean, her happiest thing is shoveling horse poop out of our barn, out of our horses' stalls. Not my favorite thing, but she loves it. And doesn't care that much about money. And so I said, I'm going off to this money seminar. The guy was saying you can triple your income in a year. I said, I want to learn how to do that. And she kind of got mad at me. She was judging me. I thought you were above that. Come on, you know, everything. And so I go and I sit down next to this woman in a seminar, and it's about 10 minutes before it starts, and she says, what do you do? And I told her, asked her what she did. She's a veterinarian. And I said, really? What do you specialize in? Anything? She said, yeah, cat leukemia. I said, that's interesting. My cat has leukemia. My veterinarian told me it's not curable. She says, no, we've actually come up with a cure. I said, really? And as a result of that meeting, our cat got cured of feline leukemia. See, you never know. You never know. Whatever you're attracted to. See, because the universe, infinite intelligence, God, source, whatever you want to call it, your own unconscious, it can see farther than you. Like right now, you can see from wherever you are up here, but you can't see behind you. But God or source or infinite intelligence is way up here. It sees everything. It sees the traffic jam 20 miles down the road. And all of a sudden you get this intuitive impulse, gee, I think I'll take the mountain pass today. Oh, that's stupid. No, but if you take it, you'll avoid the accident or you'll avoid the traffic. You've got to learn to trust your inspirations. As soon as you set a goal, as soon as you have an intention and you believe in it, and you get rid of the self-doubt, and you have a positive expectancy, you fully expect it to happen, what happens is you're going to start getting little inspirations. You'll be sitting there typing a paper, and all of a sudden you'll get this inspiration to walk down the street and maybe take Mrs. Jones, who's a new widower, some cookies. And you'll think, well, why would I do that? I got a lot of work to get done here. But let's say you do it, and you walk down, you bring her some cookies, and you have some tea, and then she says, oh, and by the way, my son-in-law is here, let me introduce you to him. And you go in and you meet the son-in-law, and you find out he's a Porsche dealer, and he's selling a used Porsche for just the amount of money that you can afford to get that Porsche you always wanted. That kind of stuff will show up over and over and over and over, but you got to trust the intuition. You have to act. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of a spiritual community in Scotland called Findhorn. Any of you heard of Findhorn? The guy who started Findhorn with his wife, Eileen Caddy, his name's Peter Caddy, tells a story of drinking tea with his wife and getting this, he just got this intuitive flash, he should go see his friend Bob. And he didn't act on it for an hour. It was an hour later he got up and he drove into London or wherever it was, and he got there and Bob had died 30 minutes earlier. And he said, I learned from that moment, when I get an inspiration or an intuitive flash, I need to act on it now, right this minute. How many of you have had an intuitive insight to do something, didn't do it, found out someone else did it, and made a whole lot of money doing the thing you thought about but didn't do? Any of you ever had an experience like that? Yeah, you've got to take action. As soon as you have the impulse, start acting on it. Now, 3 quick techniques to clarify what you want in life, how to ask clearly. One of them we just talked about, but I'm going to talk about a different one here for a minute. It's called the irritation list. My suggestion is you go back to your home, your house, your apartment, wherever you live, and you make a list of everything that isn't exactly the way you want it. Anything that irritates you. There's never a stapler by the Xerox machine. The screen door never quite closes and the bugs come in. That picture always hangs at an angle. You put it straight and it hangs at an angle again. Or there's a crack in the wall. Or, the kitchen drawers are a total mess. Or you can't find stuff in the garage or the closet. These things don't fit. Those things don't work. Your kid's room's a mess all the time. There's a smell coming out of it. Whatever it might be. Write it down. And then make another half of the sheet of paper and write exactly the way you'd like it to be. Throw away the half of the paper about what you don't want, and then go and fix everything so you get exactly what you want. Take a day or two and schedule it. Clean up as many of those little things as you can. And people go, well, why should I do that? I want to be a millionaire. I'm focusing on world peace, and you want me to be worried about my sock drawer? And the answer is yes. Because when you don't get exactly what you want in the little areas of your life, what you do is you slip into a state called resignation. You start believing you can't have it the way you want it. You actually numb out your awareness to not see that thing anymore. Have any of you ever noticed if you have a little crack in the wall and you don't fix it within a month, you stop noticing it? And then a year later, someone says, you got a big crack in your wall. But you stopped noticing it. It just became part of the background. Most people are going through life resigned, settling. Most of us are settling. Now, most of you here are not. You've made a choice to go for your life and create it the way you want it and believing you can have what you want. But do this irritation list, clean up all the little things, and the big things commit to at least one a quarter that you're going to get rid of. And then you can set a date for cleaning out the garage, or you can set a date for the new filing system, or getting the car that works, or whatever it is that's important to you. The second thing we already talked about, the 101 goals list. Make sure you do that. Have you seen that book, 1001 Places You Should Visit Before You Die? I mean, right there is a whole bunch of stuff you can put on your list. And we just knocked off southern France, Nice, Saint-Tropez, topless beaches. What else do we have on the list? But it was a lot of fun. 3 years ago, my son said, Dad, you always talk about taking me to Europe. When are you going to do it? And so we went to London, Barcelona, and Paris and spent 4 days in each city, just me and my 16-year-old son. Had a great time. We had it written down. He knew it was there. And because it was there, it actually ended up happening. The third thing is called the vision exercise. Most of you know about the power of vision, but I'd like to just share this with you real quickly. You focused a lot about finances, millionaire mind, how much money do you want, financial independence, never have to work again. Also look at your business and career goals. Maybe you want to open up China as a market. Maybe you want to be the salesman of the year in your company. Maybe you want to have a whole different career path that you want to go toward. Maybe you'd like to win an award or be elected president of your professional association. What's your vision for your ideal business and career life? Most people have that stuff down. But how many of you have goals for how much fun you're going to have this year? What kind of fun you're going to have this year that's measurable and specific in your vision of your life for the next year or the next 2 years or the next 5 years? You need to have your fun time goals. My wife and I, at the beginning of every year, schedule all of our vacations. We take about 10 long weekends, 4-day weekends. This year we're taking 5 week-long vacations. We just finished one in the south of France. In August we're doing a week in La Jolla with my family. We just came back from Africa in March where we spent a week, and so on and so forth. Schedule the time, because otherwise it never happens. Maybe you want to take salsa dancing lessons. Maybe you'd like to take an improvisational theater class. Maybe you'd like to do stand-up comedy. All kinds of wonderful things you can do, but you've got to schedule them into your life. Health and fitness goals. Do you know what your cholesterol level is? Have you got a goal for that? Do you have a goal for maybe competing in a marathon or a biathlon or a triathlon? Or maybe one year in my health and fitness goals was to get rid of my toenail fungus. Any of you ever have that yellow toenail fungus? And most people just settle for it. Oh, it's old guy's toe disease. Nothing you can do about it. Well, if you take olive leaf extract long enough, you can get rid of it. And that became my goal, one of my goals for the year. So health and fitness goals. Relationships goals. How many of you have written goals for the next year about what you want to accomplish in the area of relationships? Just curious. See a show of hands. Not too many. One year mine was create 5 new male friends. We just moved to Santa Barbara. And what happens for most men is if you have kids, you move to a new town. Your wife goes and takes the kids to school. Your kids form friends. Your wife gets to know the parents of your kids' friends, and that becomes your social network. And I didn't like any of the husbands of my wife's new friends. They just didn't interest me. And none of them were into personal growth. None of them were meditating. None of them had a sense of larger purpose in the world. They just were boring to me. And so I made a goal to have 5 really close friends by the end of the year. So it wasn't just casual, it was a deliberate intention. And as a result of that, a strategy came up when I was meditating a couple weeks later, and every 2 weeks I invited someone to have lunch with me. Started with a guy who was a wrestling coach at UCSB, and then turned out, who knew, the police chief of our town's a really cool guy. Someone mentioned that, I had lunch with him, really ended up becoming very close friends. And so on and so forth. So now I have guys I play poker with, people we play bowls, which is a fun game, like bocce ball kind of thing. I have other people that I meditate with, and we do personal growth things together, and so forth and so on. But it was a specific goal for the year in terms of relationships. And then the area of personal. Personal would be personal growth, emotional growth, things you want to do that grow you. It could be learning to play the piano. It could be learning French. We heard Art Linkletter speaking, I think, like 9 languages. So what are your goals in the personal area? And then finally, have a vision for your life in terms of contribution and legacy. I want to share a story about this part. There's a man named Kenneth Baring who used to be a co-owner of the Seattle Seahawks. He was worth about $500 million at the time. I don't know what his net worth is now. It's probably increased. And he said his life went through 4 stages. The first stage was called stuff. He said, I wasn't happy, and I figured if I had a lot of stuff, I'd be happy. So he got a lot of money, made a lot of money, bought a lot of stuff. He had a private plane, a private yacht. He had the big house. He had the fancy cars. He had everything he wanted. Art collections, great wine from around the world. And he said, I still wasn't happy. So I figured maybe I needed better stuff. So he said, the next stage of my life, I just bought a bigger plane, a bigger yacht, a better house, better wine, more expensive this. I still wasn't happy. Then he said, well, maybe I was collecting the wrong stuff. And so I created the phase of my life called different stuff. And that's when he said, I bought the Seattle Seahawks. He said, maybe if I own a professional football team, that'd make me happy. He said, I still wasn't happy. And then he got a call from a friend who said, I'm going to go over to Bosnia, and we're going to take a plane full of wheelchairs, and all these kids that have either been born malformed or have lost their legs to landmines, we're going to give them wheelchairs, because wheelchairs give them mobility and freedom. And so he got in the plane with his friend, and they flew over to Bosnia, and he got off, and they were putting all these kids in wheelchairs. And he said, I picked up this first kid. He was about 11 years old, didn't weigh much. He was real thin. And I put him in a wheelchair. And I went to turn away to get another wheelchair, and the kid wouldn't let go of me. I turned back around. I looked down, and there was tears coming down his face. And he said, please don't go yet. And then through an interpreter, he said, I just want to look at your face so I can memorize it. So when we meet again in heaven, I'll be able to thank you one more time. And he said, I started to cry uncontrollably. And he said, it was the first time in my life I felt pure joy. And as a result, Ken came back and he started the Wheelchair Foundation. They've given away over 400,000 wheelchairs to kids around the world. And he said, I've never been happier in my life. And now he's created a new foundation because one of the biggest problems in the world is lack of clean water. We have thousands and thousands of people with all kinds of diseases and cataracts, all because they don't have clean water. And so he started a new foundation. He said, I've never been happier in my life, and he calls this last stage of his life purpose. And he actually wrote a book called A Life of Purpose. The point being, and several people have said this, the real joy comes from giving. Bob Proctor, I know, will talk tomorrow about this. I love this idea. He said, it's critical that you make a lot of money. He said, money is very useful. He said, without money, the good you can do is limited to your physical presence. See, I can show up at a homeless shelter and I can hold kids and I can read stories and I can brush people's hair and I can do lots of stuff, but it's limited to my physical presence. But when you have money, as Mark does and I do and many of the speakers up here do, we give away millions of dollars. We planted over 1 million trees in Yosemite National Forest, figuring we certainly used up a lot making books. So we thought we ought to put a few back into the ground. It's actually cool to go there and see all these little trees growing up and go, that's our trees. It's really neat. But the point being that you want to have influence for good. You know, Mark talks about creating enlightened millionaires, millionaires that give away at least $1 million. And if you create 1 million millionaires that give away $1 million, you're talking about $1 trillion in philanthropy in the world. That's not so hard to do. It's really not that big a game to play when you really think about how simple it is. All right, so we've got these 7 vision categories. What I'd like to do with you for just a moment is I'd like you to close your eyes and trust that your stuff won't blow away in the wind here. And I'm going to mention each of these categories. I'm going to be silent for 30 seconds. And what I'd like you to do is just let come up from you, from the internal natural child, from your inner self, your high self, the part of you that knows what you really want, to come up with, what do I really want in that arena of my life? And I would say, think in terms of the next 2 years. So 2 years from now, what would you like to say you've accomplished financially or career-wise or so forth? So just a little bit of going inside, so you're not listening to me and just being a speech. We'll kind of just take it inside a little deeply. So take a deep breath, close your eyes. And take another deep breath and just let it all go. You can feel the wind on your face. A little bit of moisture. Remember, whatever it rains, it's cleansing, it's cleaning out the old, bringing in the new. In Hawaii, they say whenever it rains, it's auspicious. It's the God's way of blessing the event. So we're going to get a real blessing now. So think of the area of financial. What do you truly want in your deepest heart, financially for yourself, 2 years from now? What would you like to have accomplished? What's your vision for that? And then think about the area of business and career. What do you want to accomplish? What's your vision for what you will have been able to achieve 2 years from now? And then focus on the area of fun and recreation. 2 years from now, what do you want to say you've done or experienced in terms of really having fun or recreation, travel, anything in that arena? And then think about the area of health and fitness. What do you want to have accomplished in that area of your life? Maybe it's weight loss. Maybe it's more vitality, more flexibility. Maybe a better diet that you're now eating. Then think about the area of relationships. What do you want to have accomplished in the area of relationships? And then think about the area of personal. What do you want to have accomplished just because you want to do it in terms of personal growth or development, spiritual development, education? And then finally, the area of contribution. Where do you want to volunteer? Where do you want your money to go? What do you want to be different in the world because of your efforts? Very good. Then go ahead when you're ready, open your eyes, come on back. And when you have a moment, perhaps not now because it's a little challenging, but make sure you write that down. Get it down on paper. Share it with your partner. Put it up on the refrigerator. Look at it every day. What I do is I have 3 goals in every one of those arenas. So I have 21 goals every year. And then I make a 8.5 by 11 sheet with a picture. I either get it from Google Images, or I pull them out of magazines. I put them under a page protector, and I write a little affirmation over it with a specific measurable goal. Then each day I go through that, and I look at it, and I visualize it, and I feel the feelings I would feel if I already had it. And every year I achieve at least 18 of those 21 goals, and within 2 years, the ones I didn't get, the 3 that I didn't get, I have achieved. I could go back over my life. Everything I've ever wanted has come true. Everything. Now, still working on bigger goals like transforming education, world peace, ending hunger, but those are all moving along quite nicely in terms of the measurements that we're doing in the world of those things. Now, the next step, obviously, and we won't do that here either, but you've got to set measurable goals. How much by when? Want to be wealthier? How much? Be specific.